This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show. And this is your host, Greg Gilbert, a.k.a. the Python Hyena. And folks, we have a wonderful guest on the phone with us today. We have the gifted and talented Stanley Livingston, famous for My Three Sons. I'm glad I don't have any sons. I don't have any daughters, have no kids, thank goodness. Stanley, I just introduced you.
Oh, that's my introduction? Okay. You said you didn't have any sons, so I guess I'll have to pretend to be your son today.
my elder son.
Well, I'm Uncle Charlie's age now, so anything can happen.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Out here in southern, actually very sunny Southern California, so yeah.
We're here in very, very rainy New Brunswick, Canada.
There you go.
But at least it's not snow and ice like 3 months earlier.
Yeah, we just had some snow in some mountains near us, which is kind of a little bit rare in May, but not, unprecedented.
Yeah. Well, Steve Joyner, of course, had me patched in to contact you way back in February. And, of course, Steve is a really good networking guy. How did you get connected with him?
Through another mutual friend, and, we just sort of hit it off, and he booked me on a couple radio shows and called back and said, do you mind if I book you on some more? And I went, yeah, okay. I can do them from time to time. So, it's not something I do every day, but in the last month or so I've been busy with stuff, so I just kind of opted out.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you on here today. And, of course, you're famous for My Three Sons. Now, my apologies, because I'm not familiar with My Three Sons. Of course, Steve Joyner said he's not either. But I am going to ask you to talk a little bit about that, because I know there's people out there that love that show. I know I seen a clip where there's a big cake fight. Now, I love food fights and pie fights and that old slapstick in television, and movies. And I wish there was more of it today, but because I'm a sucker for that stuff. But tell me about how you get casted in My Three Sons and how that show has endured for very, very, very long.
All right. Well, why don't we back up to the beginning then? Because it was what came before it that got me My Three Sons.
Okay.
I lived in Hollywood. I was born and raised here. Actually, my parents moved to California and Los Angeles and Hollywood in 1948. I came along in 1950. And I don't know, when I was about 3 years old, my mom wanted me to learn how to swim and took me to a swim school in Hollywood, in fact, right on Hollywood Boulevard. And the lady that owned the swim school was very entrepreneurial, and she would put these little shows together with kids that were, anywhere from 3-4 years old up to, about 14, 15. But I think it was the younger ones that kind of stole the show. And we would ride, pedal-pushed cars and tricycles underwater, and she'd put a swing set in. And anyway, that attracted a lot of attention from magazines of the time. McCall's, Vogue, all came down and did photo spreads on us. And there was a show on TV then called You Asked For It that did a segment on us. We were called the Water Babies. And they were able to photograph us underwater because the side of the pool, she had cut a porthole in it, a big, maybe 3-4 foot slab of glass was put into that so you could see underwater really well. Kind of exciting for the time, hardly for today, but back in the mid-50s, that was quite a sight to behold. But anyway, because of that, the swim school became even more famous. A lot of Hollywood celebrities and, the kids of agents and producers and directors started sending their kids there to learn how to school. And there was an agent there that took a shine to me, and I was pretty cute, pretty extroverted, and she thought I might make a good candidate to be a child actor. And my mom Didn't immediately agree, but eventually she kind of caved in, and I was sent out on some things and started working in the industry pretty much as an extra in the beginning. And one of the extra jobs I did when I was about 6 years old was an episode of Ozzie and Harriet,
Okay.
and which was a very, very popular show at that time, probably the number one show on TV. And what the scenario was Ozzie was selling Christmas trees out of his backyard to make some extra money. And they had a prospective client there and they showed him some Christmas trees. And it looked like a little mini forest. And the joke was all of a sudden about 8 kids come marching out of this forest with sleeping bags and backpacks. And we'd been camping in his little forest in the backyard. And we shot it a couple times. And for whatever reason, Ozzie came up to me and said, "Hey, I want you to say this line." And so I did, and they shot it, and then we shot it again as a close-up, and that's what got my career rolling because of actually speaking a line on TV. I was able to join the Screen Actors Guild as an actor, not an extra anymore, and Ozzie came up to my mom afterwards, and yeah, he seemed to be pretty interested in me and wanted to have me back. Of course, everybody hears that in show business, but true to his word, from about 1956 to through the end of about 1959, I probably did 4 or 5 episodes a year for the Nelsons on the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet as this neighborhood kid, and he wrote a couple episodes featuring me, so that really got my career going. To the extent that across the way, Jackie Cooper was shooting a TV series at that time called The People's Choice, and somehow I came to his attention, and anyway, he talked to my parents. Next thing I knew, I was doing a TV pilot for him called Skippy, and then all of a sudden I started getting movies. I got a movie called The Bonnie Parker Story, which was an early version of Bonnie and Clyde with Dorothy Provine. Did Rally Around the Flag Boys with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, and then I did Please Don't Eat the Daisies with Doris Day and David Niven. And then a bunch of, episodic TV for different shows of that era. And next thing you know, I had a little career going and was kind of a known quantity as a child actor. By the end of 1959, people knew about me. And anyway, my agent got a call one day from a producer who wanted to see me for another TV series, and that was potentially coming up. So I went in and met with a producer named Don Fedderson and his staff, and it was for a TV series that was potentially going on the air the next year, and it was called My Three Sons. And there was a big star attached. Of course, they wouldn't tell us who it was, and nobody knew. But anyway, a couple of days later, I was hired, and then just sort of had to sit it out while they found the rest of the cast, which turned out to be Tim Considine, who a lot of people my age probably knew from the Disney had, they had a TV series on then. They did episodic stuff. They had the Mouseketeers, Spin and Marty, the Hardy Boys, afternoon stuff for kids on TV. So Tim was cast as the older brother, Mike, and then they cast Don Grady as the middle brother, Robbie. And the grandfather in the show was William Frawley, who came straight to My Three Sons from I Love Lucy, which had just gone off the air. And we finally found out that the star of My Three Sons was a major movie star at the time named Fred McMurray.
What was it like working with Fred?
Well, everybody was just sort of dumbfounded that a movie star of that caliber was going to be doing the daily grind of a TV series. It's pretty arduous work. I mean, you're there 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock every day. And the deal was for Fred was a little bit different than our deal. We worked all year round. Fred would come in and work, from 8 to 6 every day. And he was in every single scene, or every single shot, I should say, and scene. And he would work for 3 months, and then his deal was he would have the summer off. So he would go away for, July, August, September, and then come back in October and work October, November, and part of December to finish up the series. In those days, we It's not like today where you shoot 8 episodes and that's the series. In those days, we shot 39 half-hour episodes per year, per season. So there were quite a few shows. And but basically Fred became Don Fedderson's partner and was an owner of the show, plus the star of it. And his star stature was so big that people would just fall all over themselves meeting him. We had a lot of the CBS brass would always, come in from New York to have lunch with Fred or to hang out with him a little bit. They were just awestruck and starstruck pretty much too. So it was quite a coup getting him to agree to do a TV series. Movie stars of that caliber just did not do TV in those days. If you're a movie star, that was the demarcation line. And if you're on TV, you were a TV person. So it was pretty extraordinary. And because of that, our show was treated with kid gloves by the networks. We were sort of always their favorite show and handled and really superbly, and they treated us very, very well. But I almost didn't end up in the series because of the pilot that I had done about a year and a half before that for Jackie Cooper called Skippy, and I was still under contract to him when I went out on the interview for My Three Sons and got hired. My parents had to go back to Jackie and see if they could get me out of that contract, and he graciously let me go because I think he realized at that time that show was not going to sell. And Jackie and I stayed friends over the years. He was kind of a mentor to me. But anyway, that started My Three Sons. We did the pilot in the end of 59. It went on the air in 1960. We did 380 episodes over a 12-year period, and making My Three Sons the second longest-running sitcom on TV, right after Ozzie and Harriet, which ran 14 years, which is where I started. So
Fantastic.
Who knew?
You mentioned William Frawley. Now, is that the same William Frawley that directed the Muppet movie?
No, and I don't even think they're related. No, this William Frawley, I don't know if you're familiar with I Love Lucy.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I actually just did a tribute interview back in March for Lucille Ball with a gentleman that knew her and knew the cast of that show very well.
Well, he was Fred Mertz.
What's that?
He is his character before My Three Sons, coming on to My Three Sons as the grandfather on My Three Sons. He played Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy.
Actually, maybe I might have it wrong. Maybe maybe it was a James Frawley that directed the Muppet.
It's James Frawley.
Okay, I had that wrong. I remember
a distant relative, but
okay.
Not to my knowledge.
I just heard the name Frawley, and I don't hear that last name all the time, but I knew I connected it with the Muppet movie. So, okay, my bad, but no big deal. Corrected. But
William Frawley was kind of a salt of the earth kind of character, and had a film career before he did I Love Lucy, but primarily known for I Love Lucy, and that pretty much was the pinnacle of his career up to My Three Sons. And he was a known quantity too when he came on to My Three Sons, and pretty much beloved by audiences and beloved by me. He sort of became the surrogate grandfather I never had. So we bonded pretty quickly, and we're good pals.
Okay. Out of all those seasons, what would you say for yourself? Now, you may have to put your thinking cap on for this, but what would you say was your highlight moment for you, like personally, on all those seasons?
I can't really say there's one, because this took place over such an extended period of time. I look at my career and my involvement in the industry, and I'm sure My Three Sons is going to be the highlight of my career. Even if I came up with an idea like Star Wars next year.
Yeah, but I mean like a highlight within My Three Sons. Like out of those, what did you say, 13 seasons that ran?
12 seasons.
12 seasons. Okay, sorry. Out of those 12 seasons, what was the highlight point for you? Like what just stood out to you more than anything out of those 12 seasons?
Probably my relationship with William Frawley.
Okay.
He was my favorite person to hang around with on the set, and we ate lunch together every single day at a restaurant around the corner from the studio called Nicodell's. And, he was just such a funny guy and fun to be around, and, made time for me, which is, kind of unusual for an older guy bonding with, whatever, 10, 11-year-old kid. But, and I just, loved him from I Love Lucy. His character to me was my favorite character on I Love Lucy. And now to be able to work with the guy and, the fact that we got along so well, it was probably the highlight for me of working. Fred was, was a great role model and obviously a great actor, and, how to conduct yourself as an actor and a person and a movie star. Because, subsequent to My Three Sons, I did a lot of work and worked with, people that were less than friendly, and sometimes they would, things didn't go right, they would blow a fuse and have a tantrum or a meltdown on the set or disappear into their trailer and wouldn't come out. Fred was never like that. And, that's kind of the way I learned to conduct myself by example. A guy like that can deal with all the trials and tribulations of production and handle it, without, handle it very well. I never saw Fred go off on anybody. I never saw him scream at anybody. I never saw him have a meltdown and disappear into his trailer for a couple hours, leaving everybody standing around. He was sort of the consummate actor and the consummate human being on the set as a movie star.
He had a great career with Disney. I especially liked the movie The Apartment that he was in with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had done that just prior to coming to My Three Sons, but he'd had a stellar career going all the way back to the 30s. A lot of early films, but one of the earlier films that he did was just a mega hit. Was that Double Indemnity with Barb Stanwyck?
Oh, that's right. I saw that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And The Egg and I with Claudette Colbert, just countless numbers of films. But leading up into the 50s when he did the Cane Mutiny, did The Apartment, and then he kind of was approached by Disney to do some films there. And I think he had an arrangement because the Disney studios were notoriously parsimonious when it came to paying people. And they worked out a deal where he got paid still pretty well, but he got an enormous amount of stock in Disney in return for his participation in films. And right before My Three Sons, he had done The Absent-Minded Professor, which was a huge, huge hit. They did a sequel called The Son of Flubber. And then he went on and did a bunch of other films for Disney. Bon Voyage. Can't even remember them all, but so he continued to work on film in between seasons on My Three Sons, and here's a guy probably didn't really need to work anymore. I'm sure he wasn't doing it for the money, so but audiences loved him. He was an interesting actor because he could segue from doing drama like Double Indemnity or The Cane Mutiny to being silly and playing these flummoxed professors, and he could do light comedy just superbly. So he could segue from being a comedian, a light comedian, to being a heavy.
Yes. Now, you did a film called Please Don't Eat the Daisies. Did you eat the daisies?
I did for the publicity still. Yeah, that was with David Niven and Doris Day.
What was it like to work with Doris Day?
It was great. She was another person who was just, even though she was a huge, huge movie star, which was probably lost on me since I was only a kid then. I was probably maybe 9 years old, 8, 9 years old at that time. You have no. It's like when I met Fred McMurray the first time. I'd heard his name and saw him in Absent-Minded Professor, but his relevance to the industry was probably lost on a 9-year-old. But subsequently, you look back and you do your homework and you go, wow, these are huge people that you worked with. But yeah, Doris Day was great. We were playing her kids. I was the other twin, actor named Flip Mark played my twin, although we were non-identical twins. And then a third son was Charlie Herbert. And then there was, I believe, a little boy that was about 2 years old that were supposed to be her children in it. And, the first couple days of the show or the movie, shooting it, and even throughout the production, she played cards with us. We played horseshoes, we sang, we played games, and she availed herself to, just to be a nice person, but also, these are supposed to be your children in the movie, and you kind of want to bond with them to some extent so they're not afraid of you, and that you have some kind of relationship so that it looks somewhat authentic.
How good was she at playing horseshoes?
Pretty good. She beat us. Or maybe she let us win a couple times. I'm not sure. David Niven was nice too, and we worked with him, but he was a little more aloof. He, I don't think was particularly interested in hanging out with some kids like she was. And then Doris brought her son, Terry Melcher, to the set and hung out. And the producer, Joe Pasternak, had some kids, and we got invited to his mansion in Bel Air and hung out there for the weekend. Played with his, I can't remember his son's name now, but he was a big deal producer in those days. So it's pretty fun. Pretty fun to be on the 20th Century lot or be on the MGM lot in those days, because there was a lot of other things going on. I remember when I shot How the West Was Won, they were shooting on the next stage, and that was all the gossip was about that particular movie called Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty and Natalie Wood. So,
Natalie Wood's beautiful.
yeah, she was beautiful. Saw her all the time in the commissary or walking around, and talk to those people, and they're just like human beings too, and they talk back, and it's quite a thing. Well, even on My Three Sons, we shot My Three Sons at the studio in Hollywood that was once RKO Studios, owned by Howard Hughes, but it was purchased by Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. It became Desi Lou, and that's where My Three Sons for the first 7 years was shot there. And our neighbors next door, well, by then Lucy was doing the Lucy Show with Vivian Vance, which was, kind of an extended version of I Love Lucy. But, Fred Mertz wasn't in it, and Desi wasn't in it. Gail Gordon was, though. And next door to them, there was Ben Casey shooting, The Untouchables, My Favorite Martian, Hogan's Heroes, Star Trek. So we, had a lot of interesting neighbors that we'd go over and hang out with and go on to their sets, or they'd come over and watch us shoot.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it would have been like if I had been back then and seen somebody like Natalie Wood or a Grace Kelly or somebody like that. Grace Kelly was my favorite of the era. I thought she was just absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful. Of course, back then I probably wouldn't have known who she was, but obviously as I got older, I was like, wow, what a babe. Natalie Wood, what a babe.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I liked her especially in The Great Race.
Which one?
The Great Race. I liked her in that.
Oh, yeah. They both did a lot of great films. Yeah, it was a, interesting time to do early, what eventually is known as classic TV, was being turned out back then on these studios, on the back lots and on the sound stages. And some shows stuck around for a while, for a couple of years. And others would be gone in 2 years or 5 years, and, they'd get replaced with something else. But then they kind of came back when Nickelodeon came along, and they live in infamy now forever. Yeah, My Three Sons is interesting. Went on the air in 1960, but it's never really gone off. It's always playing somewhere.
Oh, great.
My Three Sons was on the air literally in prime time for 12 years on CBS. Well, first ABC, then CBS. Then CBS showed it in the daytime. They did what's called stripping, where they would rerun it during the day, and they ran it from about 1973 to about 1985 on daytime TV. Then Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, picked it up, started taking the old black and white episodes, some of which had never been seen twice, because we made so many episodes that you couldn't watch them all in a year, because we did 39. And then if you add 13 to 39, you're up to 52.
Wow.
So all those other shows, the other, what would that be, 26 shows were never seen even for a second time. They started running My Three Sons, several times a night, and that went on for about 10 years, and found a whole new generation of viewers, primarily the kids of the people who originally watched it. And then 10 years later, they came up with TV Land, which was showing My Three Sons, the stuff that they showed on Nick at Night in the dead of night. Now was on daytime TV, and they would show My Three Sons 2 or 3 times a day. But after that, we've been on, I think the Lifetime Channel, the Ion Network, Odyssey Network, so many different, MeTV. I think it's on another network called Legends now. I can't even think of all the networks it's been on and had a home with over the years. But My Three Sons has literally been on the air 57 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
You also got to work with Charles Bronson and Mary Tyler Moore in a movie called, what is it, X-15? X-15.
Yeah, it was about the X-15 program, which was just prior to shooting our first astronaut into space. The X-15 rocket plane was manufactured to see what would happen to pilots to go up into a weightless, oxygenless region of space, and if they could survive and come back. So, it was a pretty well-known program. It lasted about 3 or 4 years, and they sent different people up, some of whom, like Scott Crossfield, I believe, was one of the pilots, but one of the pilots of those planes eventually became the astronauts, too. But, I was doing My Three Sons, and I remember there was a director came over to the set, and he was watching me and then came up and talked to my mom, and then the next thing I knew, I didn't even interview. I just was told I was hired to do this movie with Charles Bronson. And interestingly enough, it was Mary Tyler Moore's first film.
Yeah, what was she like now? No, she was another looker.
Yeah, she was only, I think, about 19, 20, maybe 21 then. And then the director was Richard Donner.
Oh, yes, Richard Donner went on to do, of course, the Superman movies and The Omen and the Lethal Weapon movies.
Lethal Weapon movies,
The Omen?
Maverick, Lady Hawk. God, he did so many great films and was kind of a mentor. I kind of was known because of the Jackie Cooper thing. I think they had seen that pilot, they asked for it, Jackie Cooper sent over. And I was one of these child actors who could cry on cue.
Okay.
And I had a big crying scene in X-15, and I think because of that, they wanted me. And anyway, so I did it, and, my scenes were with Charles Bronson, and, he was a pretty cool guy to hang out with. And the movie went on. I don't think it did terribly well, but somebody told me that Frank Sinatra put up the money for that movie or was involved in the financing of it in some way. And Kenneth Tobey was the other star of it, who I had met earlier. I did an episode of The Whirlybirds, which is another early 1950s TV series, so I knew him. And then James Gregory. And later, James Gregory came on to My Three Sons when William Frawley wasn't coming back as the grandfather due to ill health. And he did a couple episodes as sort of the interim grandfather. And then they got William Demarest, who finally took over the role permanently. So, got to work with some really super cool people. When I was doing X-15, I got to meet all the guys who eventually became the astronauts that, when they started with the shooting the rockets up, and then Gemini and Apollo missions. Kind of a neat place to be. I've always had a lifelong interest in aviation, so that's probably where it started.
Yeah, so you didn't get to work really with Mary Tyler Moore. I haven't seen this film.
No,
so.
I didn't have any scenes with her. I forget who the lady was that played my mother. She was, pretty well-known actress at that time. Mary Tyler Moore, she was literally starting about the time of that movie. I think it was about maybe a year, 2 years later that she got the Dick Van Dyke Show. But, probably on the basis of the work that she did for that. And then I worked with Richard Donner later. This was probably, I think My Three Sons was over. I think it was around 74, 75. He was directing a TV pilot. The way they used to do the pilots then was they would do a movie of the week or a TV movie, I think they called it. And I ended up getting a call from him to go in on this TV movie called Lucas Tanner with David Hartman. Played a high school student in it and did the movie, but then they wanted me to do the TV series. And I think they wanted me to sign a 7-year contract, and it was probably a dumb thing to do, but I didn't do it. You know, I think that show lasted maybe 2 years, if. And but I just didn't want to be tied into another contract. You know, having just finished My Three Sons, 12 years of My Three Sons, it just didn't sound appealing.
Well, the year I was born, I think it was, I was born in 1972, and I think you did a movie called Private Parts. Now, we're not referring, of course, to the Howard Stern movie of 1997. Yeah. I'm referring to a film that you did with Paul Bartel.
Yeah.
And I actually got to see this movie, and I really enjoyed it. Now,
yeah, no, it really is a very well-made film. It almost echoes of an Alfred Hitchcock style film, but kind of a little more edgy and without the Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart big actors in it. But yeah, it has an interesting look to it. It was a little bit graphic for its time in terms of there's a couple murders in it that were kind of sensational, and I think that ended up they were being challenged by the ratings commission, who wanted to give it an X rating, even though it didn't have nudity or sex in it per se.
Well, you got to remember. This film came out the same year as Fritz the Cat, Pink Flamingos, yeah. Deep Throat.
Yeah. What's going on? And then what happened, the fate of Private Parts, and it's a shame because it got an amazing review from Pauline Kael.
Yeah.
And, so we thought, wow, this is like totally amazing. And, she kind of lauded Paul Bartel as maybe being the next Alfred Hitchcock. And, we thought we were onto something. But because of films like Deep Throat and Fritz the Cat, which are kind of pushing the edge, the envelope back then, the way newspapers advertised when you would put your film in the newspaper to the audiences where it was playing, there was the regular section, but then for anything that was like porno or kind of suggestive, you were put on another page where the print was grayed out, so you would be aware that potentially you were seeing an X-rated film. And unfortunately, because of the title Private Parts, it got put on that page, and it did not fare well with audiences or reach, because people didn't know what it was then. And if I remember right, can't even remember if it had a rating. It may have been unrated at the time, which hurt it, and it was unrated because of the title. But anyway, it ended up in the vault at MGM. Eventually, Turner bought the MGM library, and somehow it came back, and it's sort of become a cult film. In fact, it plays at the cult theaters in L.A. over the years. I've seen or heard that it played there, and there are fans that have seen it, and I thought, wow, it's a really good film. It's spooky and creepy, and I thought it was very, very well done, and obviously launched Paul's career, because he went on to do, what was it, Death Race 2000, and Eating Raoul, and some other pretty weird films. But, he was a friend and almost a neighbor of mine when I lived in Laurel Canyon in Hollywood.
What was it like to work with Paul Bartel?
Yeah, great. He was just an interesting guy. You have conversations and, talk about films you liked and, what he was going to do with the film and, what he wanted out of my character. I mean, I think they wanted somebody who was wholesome all-American, so I probably personified that, having come off of My Three Sons a couple of years before that. And yeah, I think it served its purpose. The other actors in there I thought were really, really good. I think they were New York actors that they had brought in or were in L.A. trying their luck.
I like that lead actress now. I can't pronounce her name now.
Her last name was Ryman.
Anne Ryman?
Anne Ryman, and then John Ventantonio.
Okay.
Yeah, they were kind of the leads and the prospective couple till you find out how weird the John Ventantonio character is. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but he's not quite what he seems, and then you find out at the end, which I guess was sensationalistic at the time. But the movie had some gore in it that really wasn't in the script. That happened after the fact, not in the script. That first scene where, what was her name? That, gosh, I should know her name. The mother or the grandmother that she stays with, or the aunt. She was great. She was that character actor. She was in Silver Streak.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, but yeah. Okay, go on.
Yeah, she's great in the film too. And but there's a scene where somebody gets their head lopped off when they're walking down the hall, almost at the beginning of the movie, and that was, usually in films up to that point, you saw it as a shadow on the wall, or you would hear a noise, but they never showed it. And this was, whack, the head came off and was rolling down the hallway, and blood squirting everywhere. And I remember I took my entire family to see it. It was, everybody was taken aback. They're back on their heels after that scene. I remember I sank into the seat thinking, oh my God, I just brought my 5-year-old little brother-in-law.
You know what's funny you said that? I just had the Materas twins on here a couple of weeks ago, and they were, of course, were in Single White Female and Kindergarten Cop, and I got to talk to Tiffany and Crystal Materas, and they was saying that when they went to the premiere of Single White Female, which I love, by the way, but they said Brett Schroeder, the director, didn't think about the fact how young they were and what was in the movie. Like, there was nudity, there was violence, and there was he was all red, had to apologize to their parents, but
I'm sure it was shot non-union, because that would have never happened on a union set with a welfare worker there or a teacher. So those things happen. Oh, I thought of the name of the lady. It's Lucille Benson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was the character actress that played the aunt, the older aunt, that turns out to be pretty wacky too. But yeah, she's great. I mean, when you see her, you'll remember her from like a million movies. She always would steal every scene she was in.
What was Anne Ryman like? I mean, did she done like?
I don't. Real nice. I mean,
yeah.
It was, it was kind of like My Three Sons. They'd always hire women to play these parts, and she was supposed to be a teenage runaway. Mm-hmm. Well, she was probably about 25 or 26. Mm-hmm. She just looked like she was 14 or 15. It's kind of like on My Three Sons. I got married to Ronnie Troop about the 10th year of the show or something, and Ronnie looked like she was a high school student, but she was actually at the time about 25, 26 years old. So, we had a little bit of a relation. That's only, when I did this thing, maybe 23. So, and I was married when I was doing that movie.
Okay.
So there wasn't anything between me and her. And even with Ronnie Troop, I was married at that time too. So they were just people that you worked with. Same thing with Kathy Garver on Family Affair. I mean, when I was 16, and I thought, oh, wow, they got this hot girl working on this new series Don Feder was doing called Family Affair, and she played the older sister, Sissy. So I thought she was probably 16, 17 years old, but, she was already like 23, 24 years old, but, didn't want anybody to know how old she was. That's how she got the part. So
I liked her.
Obviously, she wasn't interested in a 16-year-old if you're 23.
Yeah. Well, Anne Ryman, I did like her in the movies. She made an impression on me in that film. So. Yeah.
She was good. I don't even know if she worked anymore after that, I'm sure she probably, was in Hollywood or LA for a while, and people, if they do a movie, they tend to work for a little bit, and then it's somebody else's turn. That's one of the hard things if you're an actor. In fact, I produced and directed this program for actors that this is probably about 10, almost 8 years ago now, called The Actor's Journey. And, it just always occurred to me that actors get very well trained as actors. They know the art and craft of acting. You put them on a stage, they're great. You put them in front of a camera, they're great. But they know nothing about the business, the mechanics of the business side of the business. And it's pretty deleterious to their careers unless you have somebody who takes a liking to you and is shepherding your career. You're left to your own devices to figure all this stuff out. And because the colleges and the acting schools did not teach any programs to get actors up to speed on the business or what this means or what that means, it just generally means people come out, they get lucky sometimes and get into something, and sometimes the luck lasts a year, sometimes it lasts a lifetime, which is pretty rare. Most of the time about a year or two. And then that's it. And, you have your moment in the sun and it's all over with, and you can't get in no matter what you do, and you don't know what to do to get back in the door again because you don't know how you got in the first time. It was just luck. So anyway, I created this program. It's about a 10-hour program, meaning for if you're 18 years old or whatever age, up to whatever, but you have to be at least 18 years old. And put together a business program that covers 60 topics. I got 100 people from our industry to teach it. I'd say about 45 of the people that I got had either won or were nominated for Emmy, Golden Globe, or Academy Awards. Actors, directors, producers, executive producers, showrunners, casting directors, talent agents, talent managers, even the president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time, the president of the Directors Guild of America, all teaching this program on just the business side of it. And unless you find a way to master that, your days are numbered. I mean, it's fun to go to acting school and you think you're going to have this career, and then you get out and, outside of getting your reel and your resume together and, taking acting classes and trying to forge relationship with other actors, like I said, your days are numbered because it's just too many things going on that there's nobody there to tell you what it means or that it doesn't mean anything. Because sometimes things that don't mean anything, actors blow out of perspective, and there's nobody there to help them. Most other businesses that you go in, there's either an apprentice program or you have a mentor or somebody to guide you through it. The acting industry is ridiculous because they leave each actor to discover the business side of the industry by themselves. It's like, pointless because you have to keep reinventing the wheel. Every actor does. And it's a shame, because these people do spend anywhere from 5, 10 to, if you went to Yale or Harvard Drama School, you just dropped $100,000, and the industry absolutely doesn't care about you or whether you went to Yale or Harvard. You're left to your own devices to figure all this out. And most actors, 99% of them don't, more than 99%. So they're there for a short while, and that's it. Unless you get lucky, And then one of the things that's even worse is it's usually easier in the beginning to try to get in. What's hard is perpetuating a career. I think anybody can get in and get a couple jobs, but whether you can make a living at it and go from show to show to show, that's a whole other thing where you're actually being paid and, covering your health care benefits and getting your pension contributions. That's a whole other factor. Because there's kind of a farm league of the industry, meaning the part that's not affiliated with studios, network programming or cable network programming. There's a lot of stuff made, and people get involved in that, and they're paid $100 a day, or they're paid a bag of Fritos and a bottle of water. That's their pay. You can't survive on that.
We're going to get serious now and talk about one of your most serious films, Attack of the 50-Foot Centerfold.
Well, I almost wasn't in that one. That one I came to the rescue of a friend who called me up. I was working on some other stuff at the time.
The friend that you were rescuing, was it the 50-Foot Centerfold?
No, the director, Fred Olin Ray. I think they had another actor or something who bombed on them, and I wasn't really doing acting at that point in time in my career. I didn't have an agent, really wasn't pursuing that. I was pretty much trying to be on the other side of the camera. And anyway, so Fred and I were friends. He said, "Hey man, can you do me a favor? Could you do this part?" And I said, "Well, yeah, when is it?" He goes, "Tomorrow night." I'm like, "Tomorrow night?" You know? Or actually, I think it was that night. Now that I think about it, it was that night. I'm like, wow, I'm like, okay, I guess, So he sent the script over, and I had to learn it. And anyway, I didn't have to be to the set till like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. We shot all night. And then I think I had 2 other scenes during the daytime that I came back and shot. But, that's how the world works. Is once you're on the other side as a director, producer, people call you up, and so anyway, you show up for your friends. And I did have a little bit of acting background and whatever it added to have the guy from My Three Sons in there. Probably not too much, but whatever.
I can't remember who was the woman that played the 50-foot centerfold.
Oh, her name was J.J. North.
You know what? I got that down here, but I thought I initialized it.
Oh, yeah. No,
okay.
J.J. North.
That was her name.
I got a friend of mine a part on that. He was one of the weirdos that was out there that ran into the 60-foot centerfold, and he was kind of thinking about working again. He was a child teenage star, a guy named Tommy Kirk.
Oh,
Tommy
yeah. Boy, he did some stuff way back in the early Disney days.
Yeah. Well, he played with in a series with Tim Considine. They did the Hardy Boys together.
Mm-hmm.
And then Russ Tamblyn was in it, so that was kind of fun. My scene actually was with Russ Tamblyn, or one of the scenes was with Russ Tamblyn and Tommy Kirk, who was a lifelong friend of mine. I mean, I've known Tommy since I was a kid, even though he would disappear for a while and run into Tim Considine's house.
John Lazar was in that too, right?
Yeah, John Lazar. Yep.
I tried to get John on my show, but I never heard back from him. But I had somebody on from Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and we are talking about the Z-Man.
Yeah, we were talking about that when I was working with him. That was
was
way
he
out there film.
He was Superwoman.
Superwoman, right. Yeah, I remember the film. I remember going to see it. I think it's Michael Blodgett, John Lazar. I don't even remember who the women were anymore. But
I had Harrison Page on here from the film. I've been trying to get Donna Reed on here, but holy cow, like some of these people, to connect with them. I don't know. On Facebook, I don't know whether some of these people get their messages or whether they're filtered.
No, I can tell you right now, I'm on Facebook, and I never look at that stuff. That people tell me they tried to contact me through Facebook, and, because I've got 3 pages there that have 5,000 people each on it. I'm not going to look at all that.
Yeah.
I mean, my real friends have my email address, and they'll email me or call me or something. Yeah, I probably shouldn't even have had a Facebook page. I'm just not into all that. And, I appreciate people liking My Three Sons. I do have a website, so somebody can send an email from there. And then that one will go into an email box that I look at. But Facebook, I just, there's too many weirdos. I just, no way.
You mean like John Lazar?
I've heard from people that I went to grammar school with. I connected up actually with the principal of the elementary school that I went to in Hollywood, in the mid-'50s. It's a new principal.
Yeah.
Not the guy that was there when I was there, but they were having the 100th anniversary of Vine Street Elementary School. And anyway, somebody found me on Facebook, and it just turned out that was one of the times I looked at it, and I just, was curious. And anyway, the guy had his phone number there, so I called him up, and he invited me to come and speak at this little ceremony they had for the 100th anniversary of Vine Street School. So it was about 7-8 years ago I went there, and it was fun. I hadn't been to the elementary school that I went to since I got out of there, and I think I left that school when I was in the 5th grade and ended up at another elementary school. But it was fun to go back. Kind of friends with the teacher, and then the principal. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I had a buddy of mine, and we went by the school, and I don't know. I said, "Hey, you want to see the school that I went to?" And so I went in, and you don't really want to walk in and be walking around. So I made sure I went in the principal's office and said who I was and that I went there. And it turned out she knew who I was, and she was trying to find that principal because I guess he was there, but he turned out he had already left. So, but they gave me permission to walk around the schoolyard and the hallways and all that without looking like some kind of pervert or something. I don't know. Definitely want to get permission.
Yeah. No, I only use Facebook now to do stuff with my interviews and try to hunt down other people to do interviews. It's been a major source for that. Otherwise, I don't get. I don't get into the drama.
Much more avidly than I do.
Yeah.
Because like I said, doing the radio interviews, most people, they love talking about my three sons and all that, and I'm happy to oblige. But you get busy on something, and it's just not the focus of my life. I mean, I'm glad I did it, and I'm sure when I'm out of here, that'll be my obituary. Played Chip on My Three Sons. I saw already what happened to Fred McMurray. Here's a guy that did 80 of the huge films. I mean, some of the biggest films ever made back in those days, and came to do My Three Sons, and that eclipsed his prior career. And when he passed away, it didn't mention those films at all. It just had played the quintessential dad on the beloved TV series My Three Sons. So that's what I'm saying. If I was George Lucas right now and I ended up doing Star Wars next year and it became the big hit that it became and went on for years and years and years, when I pass away, it's still going to say, put Chip on My Three Sons, and that's that. It's not going to mention anything else.
So John Lazar, it's going to say Superwoman?
Maybe, yeah.
So if you get a Facebook,
we take what we can get.
If you get a friend's request from Superwoman, you're not going to be suspicious.
I don't think I'll be getting a request from Superwoman unless I run into John at Fred's house, and I haven't even seen Fred in probably 3 or 4 years. Kind of keep up with him. Through other channels. I think he's doing like Hallmark Christmas movies now, as opposed to Hollywood chainsaw hookers. Kind of moved in a different direction.
Oh.
Like Paul Bartel. If Paul had lived, he was doing like films like Eating Raoul and Private Parts. He'd probably be directing the Olsen twins or something by then. Maybe some macabre version of that. I don't know. You sort of do stuff for a while, and then it becomes something else, and then you move on.
Yeah, I think Private Parts was before he hooked up with Mary Warrenov, because he worked up really well with her.
Yeah. She was kind of his little staple of actors there. That those guys worked together a lot on different things.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that was about the time I was getting out of acting. So.
Yeah. Well, Stanley, this has been really fun having you come on here today and talk about My Three Sons and Private Parts and 50-foot centerfolds.
Hey, 50-foot centerfold. That's a fun move. Incidentally, it was Roger Corman produced that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he put up the money for it. Fred's company did it. And Fred and I think his wife Kim was the one of the producers on it. And I said Fred's a good buddy, so whatever. But interesting enough, when we did Private Parts, that was Roger Corman's brother Gene Corman produced that.
Okay.
People don't know that. And Gene had done regular movies. In fact, right after that, he did the Big Red One with Lee Marvin. I think Mark Hamill was in it too, if I remember right.
Wow.
But he kind of dabbled in doing these weird little films too, like Roger, but not a whole, not like 200 of them or whatever Roger ended up doing. I mean, Roger Corman's kind of invented the genre films. When he worked with what's his name, Arkoff and Nicholson, and they had American International Pictures, and they produced all these films, for teenagers. that was what I grew up on. You know, House of Usher, and Vincent Price, and House on the Haunted Hill, and whatever it was, Hell's Angels on Wheels, whatever was popular at the time, The Trip, you know, all these different movies that appealed to teenagers. He was pretty much at the forefront of, and either personally directed or hired new directors or directors that were soon to be famous, like Francis Ford Coppola did Dementia 13, and James Cameron, I know worked for him, Gail Ann Hurd. I mean, just tons of people went through that as their introduction to the to production, and you know, went and carved careers out. Joe Dante, it's amazing.
Ron Howard,
yep. Jack
Yep.
Nicholson.
Yep.
You know, Jack Nicholson was in The Terror, which is one of the last films I think Boris Karloff made. But you know, that was literally at the inception of his career, and you know, it's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
now it's a whole new batch.
Well, Stanley, this has been fantastic. I'm really glad that Steve put me in touch with you. You know,
Yeah, I appreciate it. Steve's a great guy.
Yeah.
He really is out there and helping, and a meaning well guy, and trying to help him out. Occasionally, I've got some friends of mine that I thought he might want to place on some radio shows or whatever, so it's kind of reciprocal.
Yeah. And you want to plug your website?
Well, it's easy if you know my name, Stanley Livingston. So just StanleyLivingston, Stanley Livingston at StanleyLivingston.com.
Can people like get autographed memorabilia and stuff like that on there?
Nah, I don't really sell memorabilia. I think there were some pictures there for sale one time. I don't even know if the buttons work anymore, but the pictures are kind of fun to look at. And then I have other stuff, you know, not just the My Three Sons stuff, but I've got a lot of information on How the West Was Won. That's kind of the other thing that I'm known for. It sort of became a big deal again about 7-8 years ago. They restored the Cinerama print, How the West Was Won, and I've been showing it all over the there's a flattened version of it that's in the super anamorphic 70 millimeters, so you don't have to have Cinerama projection to see it. But yeah, I get invited to different things because of How the West Was Won. I'm probably one of the few surviving actors that's in it. Well, now that Debbie Reynolds just passed away, I'm probably the other person that people heard of, although Russ Tamlin was in it. I don't know if he goes around. But yeah, I've been invited by the ArcLight Theater, which is the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood, to introduce the film to audiences when they've shown it there.
Okay. Well, you know what?
I'd say that's a great film, too, really. When you see it again, I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times since it got restored when I've introduced it, and I'm always amazed how well it stood up. That film really stood the test of time, the way they did the dialogue and the characters, and there's this sense of humor to it, even though it's kind of poignant. And then, you know, its claim to fame is it had every major movie star in Hollywood wanted to be in it. You know, everybody from John Wayne to Henry Fonda, to Jimmy Stewart, Walter Brennan, George Papard, Gregory Peck, Debbie Reynolds. The list of people that are in that film is really, truly, truly amazing. And if you've seen it in Cinerama, it's pretty interesting. That's a great process. You know, it actually was responsible for invigorating audiences to go back to the movie theater. Because in 1962, 63, when it came out, you know, people are staying home watching TV in vast numbers, and local theaters were closing left and right. But when they kind of went to this widescreen process, it kind of brought people back to the theater. And then, you know, Cinerama eventually gave way to what we know as widescreen, either the anamorphic or the widescreen VistaVision, and all the different processes to have a super widescreen, as opposed to the square screen you watch at a TV. Because before Cinerama, even movies were shot in that aspect ratio, you know, 3:4, so it's virtually a square.
How the West Was Won. Do you have any stories about these great casting actors in this movie? I mean,
Well, I was cast because I was, believe, My Three Sons, and I was a major TV kid star in those days, and they were trying to get people who were very known quantities. And My Three Sons was a #1 TV series in 1962 when it, they were looking to do the film, and I was invited to come in and meet Henry Hathaway, the director, and I guess he liked me or liked the way I looked, and liked my personality. And next thing I knew, I was on an airplane flying to Arizona to be, and had a great time. And it was fun. I worked with George Papard, played my dad. Carolyn Jones was my mom. Debbie Reynolds was my great aunt. One of the scenes I did was with Eli Wallach, which is pretty cool. He was like a bandito kind of guy in that, kind of like right out of The Magnificent Seven. And I just had a great time, especially if you're a kid working on a Western, because in between scenes they'd give me a horse, let me go horseback riding, which I was really good at. That was one of the things my mom was smart about. Besides learning how to swim, she gave me horseback riding lessons all the time. And if you're going to be an actor, you had to learn how to ride a horse. Of course, I never ended up in a Western until How the West Is Won, which turned out to be hit the jackpot. If you got to be in a Western, that's the one to be in. It was in Cinerama and had every major movie star in Hollywood in it. So, but before that, I wanted to be on TV Westerns. I'd like to have been on Wagon Train or Laramie or Wyatt Earp or something like that. All kids wanted to be in the Westerns, and I just I never got into one. I sure had a lot of headshots with a 6-shooter and a cowboy hat on, but I guess I just didn't cut it. I don't know. Wasn't quick enough draw.
Perhaps not. Well, Stanley, this has been a lot of fun talking to you today, and it's been great going over your career and even the films. I enjoyed talking and hearing about the films that you've done, and I was going to say, you got anything to add before we close off?
No, that's pretty much it. That's it in a nutshell, anyway, or the abbreviated version. It's hard to encapsulate. Well, I guess I've been doing this now for over 60 years. So either in the front of the camera or on the back side, and I still love what I do, and been blessed that I've gone this far, and I got a couple more things in me before I'm out of here.
Actually, I should ask that while I got you on the phone here. What do you have coming up? Like, what projects are you doing now?
Well, I've got a couple films we're trying to find financing for, and a couple TV series ideas that we're pushing. There's one called Stunts. It's about a stuntman. Anyway, we're trying to raise funding right now for that. It's pretty kind of a comedy.
You mean like Super Dave Osborne?
No, it's about a stuntman who's a little long in the tooth, and he should retire or at least move on to be a coordinator instead of the stuntman, but he's not ready to pass the torch to anybody else yet.
Okay.
And he's kind of when he does the stunts, he's okay, but in real life, he's kind of a klutz, so it's pretty comical.
Okay.
Another one is I have a movie about the Beatles, the earliest days of the Beatles.
Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's called The Quarrymen.
Okay.
And, it's place during the days when the Beatles were basically a garage band. It's just teenagers, messing around with musical instruments and thinking, gee, I'd like to be in the music industry.
Was this pre-Ringo?
Yes, very much pre-Ringo. But what interested me about it was how much a part of the story these guys who were the Quarrymen were in the beginning of it. I mean, a lot of it was due to their participation and their parents' participation and helping them, start up. And then those guys all fell by the wayside, so the four guys who were serious about it could go on. But during that period of time where they were just having fun and doing something they like to do and meeting girls, it's an interesting part of their career that really I didn't think was very well touched on. And anyway,
So working on that.
Yeah, did you see that Beatles film that came out? Was it either last
the
year or
one
the
Ron
year?
Howard did.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a documentary about. What's interesting about that was it really kind of covered the era where they were famous. They had just made it, and how claustrophobic their lives were because they couldn't go anywhere and do anything anymore. You're basically a prisoner of your own fame, and it had great footage in it too. That was the other thing. They had access to so much great archive footage of performance stuff, and I've been a Beatles fan from the get-go, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thought Ron did a totally amazing job of making it interesting and tying it all together, and very original.
Did you have a favorite Beatles movie?
Well, I liked the two movies that they had out when I was a teenager. I went to see Hard Day's Night, obviously, and probably have seen it, I'm sure, multiple times. And I liked Help, which was more like a movie than a documentary. But I probably like Hard Day's Night better.
Yeah, same here.
About it, and the way they're, you really felt like, I don't know, there was just such a sense of fun, and you look at that and go, I want that. My life sucks compared to theirs.
What about Yellow Submarine?
It was okay. I thought it was great animation, and it was fun to watch. Probably more fun if you're on acid or something.
Yeah.
But you look at the Beatles, they've stood the test of time. Every time you thought it was over, 1995, the anthology comes out and introduced them to younger generations, and the parents and grandparents of the kids who were around in 95, going, hey, you should check this out. These guys were the greatest, which they were. When you look at all that work, plus the anthology, I think kind of made people interested in the alternate takes that didn't make it onto the album, but to see how songs developed, from somebody just sitting there with an acoustic guitar trying to scratch it out, and and then eventually it turns into I'm the Walrus or something that we all know and love.
Do you have a favorite Beatles song?
It's funny because I think when I was younger, I liked Paul McCartney's songs better. Probably Michelle is like a great song. Paul better, but I think as I grew older, and and then you're into your own art of what you're trying to do, I probably started to like John more. I just thought his songs were deeper and coming from another place, and I realized too his voice was really special. Just that gravelly it had to it, and then you listen to that, and then you go back to the beginning and stuff, and go, man, this guy was just a singularity, what he was, and same thing with Paul, and George. It is the case of you have this confluence of three guys that were supremely talented, all living within a mile of each other, and what were the odds that they would find each other? I'm sure they would have gone into music and made their own way and maybe ended up in different bands or as single artists, but the fact that they found each other, and, they were all great, but the whole was more than the sum of the parts. That's when you're great.
Yeah. Well, Stanley, this has been a lot of fun, and I really wish you luck with that. I like the Beatles. I'd definitely be interested in that film when it comes out.
All right, well, we'll touch base again and see how it's going, or if it's going, or if it's not going. Getting movies funded these days is not at all like, even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we'll see how well we do. Hopefully there's a few people out there with funding that are also Beatles fans and would like to see something more done or be a participant in it.
Even the Stuntman movie I'm interested in. It's interesting stuff. Considering all the recycled stuff going on today, it's nice to see people trying to churn out something that's got some thought to it.
Yeah. You just got to go with your instincts of what you like, and hopefully it's what other people like, and it kind of all comes together.
Yeah. You got an idea who's going to play the Stuntman?
Not really, not yet. We were looking for somebody who, had a career, maybe is still working. Like I said, because it's got to be somebody, I don't want to say it's long in the tooth, but somebody that would be believable. One of my partners was talking to Michael Pare.
Okay.
So maybe could be him. And then for the Beatle movie, we were thinking about Daniel Radcliffe for the John Lennon part.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so, try to find a movie star, but then I don't know if it weights it too much in the John Lennon side then, because it's not supposed to be another movie about John Lennon. They already done a couple of those that kind of, I think, focused more on John Lennon. They did Nowhere Boy, which I thought was a great film, just really great, but it really had nothing to do with the Beatles so much as it had to do with the triangle, the relationship between himself and his aunt and his mom, that tug of war that kind of made him who he is.
Well, I think Daniel Radcliffe would be a great casting choice for that.
He really looks. I always thought that every time I never saw any of the Harry Potter movies, but when I'd see the poster, I'm going, I had to imagine John Lennon as a kid. This guy looks just like what I think John Lennon would look like, and he still does. It's amazing. I have some photos that we've used, and at various points when John Lennon was 14, 16, 18, early 20s, and definitely. I know Radcliffe could pull it off, and I don't know whether he'd be interested in doing it or not, but certainly be interested in approaching him and seeing if he would be.
Fantastic. I recommend that, absolutely. What about the other actor? What about the other Beatles? You got any ideas?
Well, that's the problem. If you get Daniel Radcliffe, then you've weighted it, maybe even unintentionally, because you've got a movie star playing one of two guys who are kind of of equal weight. So, whether that, I don't know if we'll find somebody of that stature that looks like or could be the Paul McCartney character. I'd love it if we could. Then it would really kind of neat. But then again, there's the George character, and he had his own contributions to the whole thing too. So, trying to keep it on even footing so that it's, I guess, in terms of the three characters, kind of balanced, I guess you would say.
Okay. Well, Stanley, before you go, I was wondering if you would do a plug for my show.
We can do that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you want anything in particular you want me to say?
Just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert or on Python's Paradise. That's the name of the show. It's Python like the snake. In New Brunswick, Canada.
Python Paradise?
Yeah, my DJ name's Python. You ever been to New Brunswick, Canada before?
No, I have not.
No, huh?
All right, I could take a stab at this.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, go.
Everyone?
Yep.
Any time to go?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, you're listening to Stan Livingston, Chip from My Three Sons, and you're listening to Python Paradise with Greg Gilbert. I'm sorry. Why did I not? Hi, this is Stanley Livingston. You probably remember me as Chip from My Three Sons, and you're listening to Python Paradise with Greg Gilbert in New Brunswick, Canada.
No, that was great. That was great. No, New Brunswick's one of those places I joke with people and I say, I bet Donald Trump don't even know where this place is.
You're lucky. I may be joining you soon. I flee the country.
Well, you know what? Canada has got lots of room, so feel free.
Good.
Come right in.
Well, you might have about 300 million people, or at least 150 million moving there.
Well, I want Emma Stone to move in with me.
Well, that wouldn't be bad either. Just watch La La Land. Yeah, she wouldn't be, I don't know, she's probably high maintenance, though.
She put me in La La Land, all right.
Yeah. It was like those little redheads.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Anyway, well, I better fly here. I've got to get out to a meeting. So anyway, it's been fun, and we'll talk again sometime.
well, Stanley, God bless you, and you have yourself a fantastic day.
You too. You take care now. Bye now.
Yep, bye-bye.